Hey, business building warrior, welcome to Silent Sales Machine Radio. I've got a guest I'll be bringing on today, which is what we've done hundreds of times on this podcast. We bring on guests who are successful students of the Proven Amazon course, which is the flagship training course that launched this podcast. There's a link to it at silentjimdotcom. You can see on my little lanyard here if you're watching on YouTube today. Thanks for joining us. Most people listen to our episodes. Did you know, by the way, that we've got hundreds of episodes that aren't on YouTube? So if you enjoy these and you happen to be watching us on YouTube, jump over to silentjim.com, click on podcast, and you'll see a whole bunch of recent interviews with successful students who are using the strategies we teach to succeed and build beautiful businesses and multiple streams of income using the internet creatively. That's what this show is about. Today's guest, his name is Rad. What a great name, right? He served his country honorably as a Marine. He was a school teacher and a school counselor for a while, had some health issues, brought him home, became entrepreneurially minded, and jumped into e-commerce. Now he's built a beautiful business, beautiful 5-figure per month business that's scaling very quickly. We're interviewing him just a few months into his journey, and already he's putting up some great numbers with a lot of momentum and a very bright future. I think you'll love his humility, his insights. He's providing some very practical tips and strategies today as well that you're going to really enjoy. He's going to be joining us along with his family, as you'll hear us discuss today, in Orlando at the Proven Conference. That's our annual gathering of listeners to this podcast. We had about 650, 700 people join us last year. In 2024, we're going to do it again, May 23rd through 25th of 2024 in Orlando, Florida. Plan to join us. Put it on your calendar. The website is theprovenconference.com. 3 words, theprovenconference.com. Rad will be there with his family, as well as dozens of the guests that you've heard interviewed on this podcast and hundreds of listeners, people from our Facebook group, about 74,000 of us in our Facebook group. They hang out all day, every day. It's a free group. You can come see about 1,900 posted success stories in our Facebook group from people who are doing the stuff we teach here. There's a link to all that at silentjim.com. Check it out. We'd love to have you as part of our community, but let's jump over and meet Mr. Rad. And I love the way he starts the episode today with a question that he had for me. So we spend just a couple minutes at the beginning talking about some personal stuff. And he actually dove into a bit of my family's history and had a pretty good question. And I had some fun answering it. Hopefully you enjoy that as well. A little bit of World War II story from my family. And so hopefully that's meaningful to you. Hopefully we don't bore you too much with my family history, but I think it's a pretty cool story. So hopefully you enjoy that. But we get into plenty of great content today, very practical tips and strategies. Even those who may have been doing this business, selling on Amazon for a considerable amount of time, I learned a few new things today, so I know you will as well. So enjoy today's episode. Thanks for hanging out with us. So Rad, welcome to Silent Sales Machine Radio. Good to meet you, man.
Thanks. I appreciate you having me. Long-time listener, first-time talker.
Yeah, I hear you, man. All right. So you've listened to a few talk shows over the days. I've had a few people say that at the beginning. I love it. I get that reference.
Yeah.
Man, I'd love to get into your story and hear your journey of e-commerce and Amazon, man. Let's dive in. You ready?
Sure. Before we got started, I did want to ask you, I know yesterday was Pearl Harbor Day, and just what little I know about you and your family, I appreciate the sacrifice that your uncle made. But I don't know if you'll do anything special for that. I just wanted to say thanks. I appreciate it. So it goes a long ways.
I appreciate you noticing that detail about my family, Rad. And since you opened that door, I'll tell a quick little story to start the episode. If you're to visit the Big Island in Hawaii and you go out to the memorial, there's the USS Arizona is buried at sea there. And they've actually, it's one of the only buried at sea memorials that I'm aware of. I think it's the only one.
The only one I'm aware of, yeah.
Yeah, my grandpa's brother at the age of 17 or 18, I think he may have got in a little early. But regardless, he was young, just sleeping below deck on the Arizona when Pearl Harbor, when the Japanese attacked, and he was killed. One of the first casualties of before U.S. had declared war, died below deck.
Sure. 7:48 a.m.
Yeah, exactly. He was asleep below deck, man. And we don't know how he perished exactly. We don't have those details, but his name is emblazoned, and my brother's actually named after him, Kenneth Cockrum. So if you're ever out there and you see the memorial, look for Kenneth Cockrum. That's my grandpa's brother. So my grandpa enlisted along with a bunch of his buddies, fought, served valiantly, and came back with the battle scars that you'd expect for, World War II. It's pretty brutal. And and highly decorated. But one of our family's prized possessions that I've got in my closet right there, it's about 6 feet away from me right now, and was a Japanese flag that my grandpa took off of a soldier that he killed in hand-to-hand combat. But he brought
Holy
it home, gave
cannoli.
it to my dad with this request. He said, "I want you to make friends with someone from Japan at some point and gift it to them as a way of kind of helping the two nations heal from what we just went through." How cool is that,
Sure.
right? But my dad
Sure.
just
That
couldn't
is pretty
part
cool.
ways with it. He gave it to me, and I just
Right.
couldn't part ways with it. So it's kind of the possession of my son, although I'm holding it for my oldest son who served in the military, and I've given him the same thing. Hey, if at some point when you make a good friend out of someone who's Japanese, gift this to them from our family, and it just hasn't happened yet. It's hard to let go of
Right.
it, but yeah,
Right. One day. That's a pretty neat. That's a pretty neat heritage, though. That he had the forethought to bring something back like that, and
yeah.
he wanted it handled that way. So that's pretty
Yeah.
neat.
It speaks a lot to the kind of men that I've had as mentors and that have kind of shaped who I am. And, we will do what it takes, but he didn't hold a grudge. He had no hate in his heart. One of the most giving, caring, kind, gentle men you'll ever meet. But when his country needed it, man, he stepped up and
Sure.
you know, impacted history. The greatest generation, right? He was at the heart of it,
That's
man.
right.
Miss them every day. But thanks for the
Yeah.
opportunity to share that little story at the beginning. I appreciate that, man. I don't
Yeah.
get
You're
asked a
welcome.
lot of questions along those lines on the podcast.
I
So
mean, you're the only person I know that even knows someone, much less is related to someone. So I think that's pretty spectacular. I mean, it's a difficult thing, certainly for your family to have gone through, but I just think that's pretty neat.
yeah,
So
it's part of our story, and I carry the Cockram name proudly, and I've told all my sons, especially, it's something you're going to carry with you your entire life. And a
right.
lot of really good men have shaped the reputation behind that name, and that's a big gift you've been given.
Mm-hmm.
So carry it with pride and treat it with the
Sure.
respect and honor it deserves. So yeah, it's a beautiful thing to me. It really is. It's a beautiful part of our heritage. I got to tell my grandpa on his deathbed, I said, I'll make sure that we never forget that part of our family story. And he just
Sure.
smiled. He was unable to talk at that time. He just smiled. So
Right.
it's a good memory I have with him. But all right, Rad. Hey, man, this is e-commerce, dude. I
Yep.
love it.
Sorry. I'm going to take us back to, I spent 6 years as an active duty Marine. When I got
Thank
off
you for
active
your
duty,
service.
you're welcome. I mean, I see probably one reason that your story really resonated with me is, I mean, my 6 years was 2002 to 2006, and the infantry was pretty busy during that time.
It was.
I got married in 2008, excuse me, is when I got out. And my wife said that I couldn't play with guns and trucks all day, which is kind of what I did, but not really.
Were you
And
deployed then?
I was, yes, sir. I did 4 deployments. I went to
Four.
Afghanistan twice, Iraq once, and Guantanamo Bay for
Wow.
one as well. But it
So
was, I mean, the first 30 months that I was in service, I remember I was at home, or excuse me, I was gone 24 out of those 30 months. The
wow.
first 30 months I was on active duty when I got done with my training. So
Well,
it was pretty busy, but it was great. I loved it.
yeah.
Made some really good friends. Yeah, it was a special time, but it was a very busy time. I certainly wouldn't want to do it now with wife and two children because I was gone all the time. I mean,
Sure.
gone all the time.
Sure.
So,
Oh, thank you for
but
serving, man.
you're welcome. Thank you. In 2008, I got off active duty, went back to school, and became a school counselor. And I spent about 12 years. I was an elementary, middle, and a high school counselor. Sometimes all at the same time when I worked at the alternative school. And the last 4 years or so, I was in public education. I had some real serious health problems, and I realized a couple things during that time. One, the school district wasn't going to resolve the problem. I mean, the problem was there was mold in the buildings. It took me about a year and a half, and I don't know, five
Wow.
doctors, a couple MRIs. I mean, it took me a long time to figure out, and identify what the problem was. And then the school district just kept saying, "Oh, there is no problem." Well, my body's telling me differently, and I'm kind of a difficult person to pass up something. I don't quit often. And finally, after 4 years, I realized I'm pretty sure I'm just making myself miserable and this is never going to change. So I moved on. I wasn't really intending to move on, but I just felt like God moved me in a different direction. I didn't have a choice about it. If He didn't create that difficult, I mean, that's some of the most difficult times in my life that I've ever had to deal with. The biggest problem is, some molds produce what's called a mycotoxin, and it just creates inflammation. And so I'd have a headache from the minute I got up in the morning until I could fall asleep at night. And sometimes it just got worse throughout the day. And as the months went on, I just couldn't live like it anymore. I struggled with depression for a while, quite a bit of the time.
That's intense. How quick did it clear up after you were out of that environment?
Well, the problem is, and that's what first, kind of clued me in that, hey, maybe there's something wrong with this building, is I spent about a month out of the building one summer, and I realized, wait a second, I'm starting to actually feel a little bit better. And so, but it takes about, I don't know, about 6 to 8 weeks for it to really me to completely feel like it's out of my system. The worst part is the headache. But I mean, I don't know if you've ever had any family members who experience some loss of memory in their older age. I've had the opportunity to help some folks in our family through that, and that's what I felt like. When they look at you and they know they have something to say, they just can't get the words out. I mean, that's what names have always been really easy for me. I would forget little things like people's names. I forgot how to use a tape measure one time. I mean, I've almost built 3 houses. I forgot how to use a tape measure because your brain is so stressed and so taxed by all of this. It creates lots of problems that people just aren't aware of. And it was the right time for me to move on. But it was not really what I was intending to do. So I got off, or I left the school district, not really sure what I was going to do. I just knew I couldn't keep doing that. And because I just couldn't live like that anymore. And I originally what I wanted to do when I first got left school counseling is I wanted to open a scrap metal recycling center. I've been doing that as a hobby for many years. And what I quickly realized is that no one wants to hire someone with over a master's degree worth of education for an hourly rate job that they assume are not going to stay very long. So I struggled for about 6 months trying to figure out what I was going to do. And my brother was installing the cabinets. He installed the cabinets for my sister's house. And so I was just over there helping him because it's here in town. And he mentioned, one of his friends, well, he's a mutual friend of ours, but I met him through my brother, and that he was selling stuff on Amazon. And I said, I think I would like to talk with him about that. I've bought and sold stuff on the internet, for 20 years. As a matter of fact, when I was in graduate school, I bought and sold my books. That was pretty much what they were. And I even created a couple listings back in the day to sell some other random stuff that I had around the house. But so I'd always kind of dabbled with selling stuff. I just didn't have any real direction. That was just something I did as a hobby. So went and met in Atlanta, which is, I don't know, about 3 or 4 hours from where we are. I went and met with my friend and his brother, or my brother and his friend, and had breakfast with him and just talked with him about what he was doing. What he's doing is REPLENS. And he gave me some homework to check out some of the podcasts that you have, and gave me some of the. He told me about the PAC course, and he gave me some of the modules to work through. And that was in like December of 22. And at that time, I like probably to overanalyze sometimes before I jump in on things. Once I'm in, I don't typically hesitate to make decisions, but I spent about 6 or 8 weeks, maybe 2 months, going through a number of the modules in the Proven Amazon course. I mean, I started from the beginning of the podcast and just started listening to any ones that I thought would be relevant. And finally, in February, I realized that it was time to get on the horse and ride instead of just walking next to it and looking at the scenery.
That's about 9 months or so ago. You got serious. You started kind of looking at it about a year ago.
It's about 10 months ago that my first actual sale occurred on February 28th. So I don't remember exactly when that got sent in, but the first sale was on February 28th. And the month of March, man, I was riding the gravy train on biscuit wheels, as my brother would say. And I thought I was doing great. I mean, I had about 5,500 in sales. I had 30% net margin. I mean, I thought this is awesome. And I lost my biscuit wheels in the month of April. And I think what we think happened is that somebody found my storefront and shared the 2 or 3 listings that I had that had sold a lot of in March. And so by the time the end of April, middle of May came around, my sales had dropped to just a fraction of what they were that first month. And I couldn't even sell the stuff that I was selling really well that first month. So
what lessons did you pick up from that? You mentioned a handful of ASINs that were doing really well. And how did you pivot at that point? I'm sure that's probably where you're going next in the story, but I want to emphasize that there's a point I want to be sure to make here if you haven't learned that lesson already. Go ahead.
So I think the biggest thing that I learned is being consistent about making sure you're sending stuff in. But success is not the time to rest on your laurels and watch it happen. And I wasn't really watching it happen. It just happened so quickly and then went away so quickly. I didn't have a chance to have other ASINs that I was sending in. I mean, I was still in the testing phase of stuff, and all of a sudden, I was selling more of the stuff that I could source and send in, and then it went from selling more of it that I could source and send in to selling none of it. And I still had a whole bunch of it that I'd sent in because it all happened so quickly. So don't outpunt your coverage. I mean, don't be more aggressive than you need to, but be consistent about finding stuff. I stopped and focused a lot of time on sourcing that and send those few things and sending them in rather than continuing to find ASINs and source that. And that's where I think I that's the lesson I took away from it, at least.
Absolutely. And one of the rules, and you'll hear it come up around here all the time, if there was like a top 10 commandments of REPLENS, which again, REPLENS is one of numerous strategies for success on Amazon, but it's where we start everybody for the most part. 99% of our students, like, your brother and friend referred you, and like, this is where you need to start. But one of the rules is always be finding more ASINs, and that solves and covers every challenge you're going to run into, because we know for a fact that whatever ASIN you're on right now that you like, it's got a lifespan. It's going to be gone. It could be tomorrow. It could be a year and a half from now. You do not know, which is why you don't want to go in super deep on any of them. At least I love that analogy. Don't outpunt your coverage. The good football NFL analogy.
That's right.
Because we see it all the time. People are like, oh, wow, I can get this at a 20% discount if I buy 1,000 units. Let's go, man. And then before the shipment even gets to them, someone's come along and ordered 10,000 units. It cut the price in half. Nothing you can do to control that. So you want to stay nice and shallow on a bunch of different listings as a strategy. So I'm glad we spent some time on that, just if there's some new listeners, especially, to make sure they understand that lesson. Never have more than a month's worth of anything on hand. And maybe that's a little aggressive for some of the newer ASINs that you're testing.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't. I mean, what I have since done is, I've just gone back to, I usually don't get more than 3 if I'm testing something. And if those 3 sell in 30 to, maybe 45 days at the most, I'll send in 6. And then I just have continued to grow up from there.
That's right.
But I mean, I think if, I was so early, I was so new in what I was doing. I had so few ASINs. I think I had about 30 ASINs at the time. And I think it was 3 of them that were selling really well. And those 3 just completely flatlined, but I still had inventory that was going in because I was adding up. Okay, if I sold this many this week and I sold this many, the last week, okay, I'm continuing to send them in, and then all of a sudden I realized, after about 2 weeks, wait a second, I'm not selling any more of these, and I can't even sell them and make money at what they're currently selling for. So the interesting thing is, I did hold on to that ASIN, and the first 2 ASINs that I had that I did really well with have come back, and I'm selling a lot of them again. But I'm not sending in as many as I did.
There's a few things we know when, everyone talks about price tanking as if that's the sad ending of a sad story. No. Price tanking means several things. One of them is that's a hot ASIN. Price wouldn't be tanking unless there's a lot of buyers buying, because there's a lot of sellers selling. That means the stock is rising on that ASIN in the Amazon algorithm, which means it might make a good bundle ASIN if you're into branded bundles, because there's a lot of attention on that brand and that product. It means that everyone's going to beat each other up while you step back and let it happen. And you can come back to that clear battlefield 6 months later and just step in with the same price you were selling for before. You'll see these run in a 3-year pattern. You'll see it just over and over. Dip back up to normal for a while, dip back up to normal. So you just wait, you pull your inventory out, either keep your price where it is, but you don't want to pay long-term storage fees, but just store it. The number of times that we've just said, okay, we're backing away from this ASIN, we'll check it in 6 months, and then gone back in, I would say almost without exception, they've come back. And in some cases, it's even better than it was at its peak prior, because the product becomes discontinued. Now there's nobody that has any of it except you.
That's fun.
Right. Those are beautiful. So here you got this hot product and you're the only one that has it. So that's how to me, price tanking represents future opportunity or current opportunity without exception. But it's all a matter of perspective. Some people see it as a big negative. No. Recall.
You just have to be able to navigate the low price sales and not be counting on that. It's not like I was counting on it, but it happened so quickly and it done so well. I was making the best decision I could at the time, but I still ended up sending too many in. And the month of May, I did end up having, I think by May, I'd gotten to over 10,000 in sales. But
Wow.
my margin was down to like 17% because I had so many of particularly one of those items that I had really been aggressive on,
You were taking a hit.
that I was,
Moving it.
I don't know that I took it. I mean, I was selling them for a break even, maybe losing a few cents on the dollar, on them, but not very much. I just, my overall net that month was very much smaller because
Right.
I had so many of those that I was trying to keep
You
from
were
paying
turning
long-term
$1 bills
storage.
into $1 bills fast,
Right.
which
Or
isn't a way
maybe
to.
99 cents in some cases, but
Yeah,
yes.
exactly. But you look at a business that's breaking even on some of their stuff and making profit on other. That's not a bad business. It's businesses get hurt when they go all in and they really take a hit, like 20 cents on the dollar, kind of just like, oh wow, what were we thinking? So our whole model is kind of built around avoiding the big losses
Right.
and kind of embracing those break even moments as lessons
Sure.
and benefiting from the spikes and the peaks, right?
Sure.
So ten
And I
thousand
think
dollar a month, I mean, that's significant. Even at 17 points of net margin, man, that's not a bad month. It's
no,
$1,700 in the
it was
bank.
not a bad month. I wasn't complaining about it. It was, my margins were so much lower. I was very fortunate that first month, and so that was kind of my standard of measure. And everything for the next, everything since then has been lower than that. And it's like, darn, am I doing something right? And I realized, during that time, yeah, I'm doing it right. I
Yeah.
just, this is what happens sometimes. And like my friend said, it's not really. It's pretty atypical that, like one of the aces that I had that I sold so well, it went from having 40, 41 sellers to like 125 in
Mm.
43 days.
Yeah. It got on
So,
some buy list or something. Sure.
right. It got posted on a leads list somewhere, and there I went. But I do sell them now for more than I was 7, 8 months ago.
Yep.
So it has come back. The
They always
product has
do.
gone up about 50%. So I don't have as good of numbers on it, but I'm still making, I don't know, between 30 and 40%, and $6 to $7 every time they sell. And I think
Nice.
I sold 38 of them
Yeah.
last month in the last 30 days.
Yeah. And
So
I don't want to move too far past the point. I mean, you started in February. Now we're talking about May, doing $10,000, putting, 17 points net margin in the bank. That's
yes,
a,
sir.
that's a beautiful business, man. That's not easy to do in any
It,
business, to ramp
you
up
know, I
that
don't.
quickly.
I don't know. I mean, you listen to so many folks that come on the podcast, and it doesn't. I don't really feel like I'm successful. I don't know that I say I'm not successful. I don't really feel like I don't have a remarkable story to tell. But yeah, I mean, when I stop and think about it, to go from nothing to where I am now, I have done really well, and I might have lost a few dollars here and there on things along the way, but as a general rule, continuing to grow my net margin and make better buy costs or buy decisions, and grow my overall. So it's
Yeah.
certainly, there's a learning curve. I was so fortunate so quickly that
Mhm.
all of a sudden I woke up one day, a couple of weeks later, and went, well, what just happened here?
Sure.
And I really struggled with, what is going on? But it was fortunately, a little more atypical for something to go down that quickly like it did for me.
It does happen, but this is why you play again, inch deep, mile wide, and you're always looking for new ASINs constantly because at any given time they're going to crash and burn, which is why we kind of graduate people from the REPLENS model into, say, branded bundles where you got ASINs that belong only to you. But just in the past couple of weeks, I've talked to sellers in our community. One has an $18 million OA business,
Wow.
REPLEN style. One has a $3 million
Wow.
OA business, just online arbitrage, just replens, just churning ASINs, just
Sure.
finding them and moving away from them as they get bad and moving in a little deeper into the ones that are good, and playing that game. How deep do we want to go? We know this could last a week or it could last 6 months. I'm not going to buy 1,000 units of anything ever
Sure.
under any circumstances. If other sellers can sell it, I'm not going that deep. It's not a risk
Sure.
worth taking, right?
Sure.
But do I buy 50 or do I buy 10? You're making those kind of decisions constantly on a bunch of products. And if you can build a system around that, which we're getting better at all the time around here, it's a
Sure.
beautiful, viable business. And these little growing pains that you're feeling and these little experiences, these wins and losses, that adds up to a lot of wisdom and a lot of really good instincts that are going to serve you well as you start adding commas and zeros to the back end of your numbers, man.
Right. Right. I mean, that's the whole plan.
Yep.
So, one of the things that I really have had to remind myself of is that obstacles can either be seen as an obstacle or as an opportunity. And a good example of that is I have this tool set that I found at a big box retail store, and I only found it because I was there returning something. I don't. There's not a whole lot. I live in a rural community. There's not a whole lot. Most of what I do is OA, and I just happened to be returning something at this store, and there was the circular sitting right there while I was waiting for my turn in line. And so I'm flipping through the circular, and I'm like, oh, that's looks like a good price for something that I might could resell. I'm like, but that's too big. I'm not shipping that thing. And went a couple more pages, and I said, no, wait a second. If that's my first thought, how many other people have that same first thought? And so I went back and revisited. I did go find it on Amazon, and I think it had, when I looked at it last month, it had 4 drops. And I thought, okay, I'm like a mile and a half from this store. I'll just buy one, put it in my trailer, because I have an enclosed trailer that I use as my warehouse. I'll just put it in my trailer. And if it doesn't ever sell, then I'll just take it back, and doesn't really hurt me at all. And not really taking any inventory away from them. Well, I think in the last 7 or 8 days, I think I've sold 5 of those things. So, and
Yeah.
and they're costing me about $80, and I have over 100%. My net on my ROI on those is in between 100 and 125, depending on whether it's, because I sent one in FBA just to see what would happen, and that one sold too. So
Selling what?
I've
About
been surprised.
$250 or something? What are you selling for?
Yeah, 240. I did raise my price a little bit because they've done so well, but yeah, about 235 to 240 is what I sold
That
all of
is
them for.
fantastic, man. I love it.
So
yeah, great
anyway,
example.
My whole point is, I first looked at it and said, that's too big. I don't want to fool with trying to
Too
ship
much
that.
to
And then
mess
I
with.
realized I ship all kinds of stuff. Why am I worried
Yeah.
about trying to fool with that? And it has worked out really well. So I mean, I've made in between $500 and $600 on just those 5 or 6 that I've sold in the last 8 or 9 days.
And those deals are everywhere. People like to draw their lines in the sand. And one of the lessons I want to pull out of the example you just gave is, you're looking at Keepa, it drops 4 times a month. A lot of people would say, well, I read somewhere that unless it's dropping 12 to 15 times a month, you may have a hard time selling it. Okay, well, if you bend the rules a little bit and you test it, put 1 unit in your trailer, merchant fulfill it. Worst case scenario, you break even, flip it on eBay or Facebook Marketplace, or take it back. We discourage people from taking back a bunch of stuff. You can kind of burn through relationships that way, right? But time to time, you take back a big purchase, no big deal. Put it back on the shelf. They can sell it again. But the point is, the risk in the scenario you just described is minimal, and you uncovered a big opportunity because you're willing to take a slight risk, and those are everywhere, millions of them everywhere. I've been sharing in the Facebook group lately. Over the past few weeks, I've shared 50 examples of ASINs that I sell against, where we are selling above the buy box consistently, steady sales, at least a good handful of per month above buy box. So if the typical buy box is $22 to $23, we're selling it for, say, $30. Not as rapidly as the sellers who have the lower prices, but consistently. So my risks are lower. I just keep a few units on hand, sell a few a month. That's cool. Getting great net margins. I just described millions of ASINs that people could jump on to have fit that description, right? Why not? So the opportunity is just wide open from my vantage point. It's never been more wide open than it is right now, just because there's more shoppers than there's ever been. And people want stuff fast. And on that point, the course is part of the Proven Amazon course. I just described that little mini course. It's in there. You might enjoy going through it, Rad.
I did. I think today is the last day of the sale. Although by the time this airs, it'll be past the last day of the sale.
By the time this airs, we had a sale on it, but it's included in the Proven Amazon course. So any students there can jump in and find it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's free in there. We put everything into the Proven Amazon course eventually. But but the point I wanted to make is, that this is just me watching my personal Amazon seller account, and I'll pop in a few times a day and like, okay, what's just sold? And I'll look down the list. Like, let's take a look at that one. Where are we at? Yep, above buy box. I mean, that's just part of our strategy, but that's just one way. But that opens up millions of ASINs, because you have to think of Amazon. This is the point I wanted to make. You have to think of Amazon not as one warehouse where all the customers price sensitively shop all day. It's
Right.
150 warehouses spread out across the country. And a lot of times people are saying, hey, no, I need that power tool for a project I'm doing tomorrow.
Right.
I don't want to wait 4 days for it to ship from LA. I'm on the East Coast and
Right.
I need it tomorrow. And if I have to pay an extra $25, cool, no problem. That's where your price point is parked, and you're the only viable option they have to get that product on time. And so people are willing to pay more. Millions of shoppers use it all day, every day that way. So once you understand, like, I don't have to win the buy box. I don't have to play at the price level everyone else is on an ASIN. Just because our price is tanking even doesn't mean I got to tank with it. I can hang out right up here, right?
You just have to be careful how you manage how much inventory you have if that's
Yes.
what you're doing. And that
That's your
was the
risk
biggest takeaway
exposure.
for me.
Mm-hmm.
Because the thing that I was selling really well that first month, I haven't even come close. I haven't been within $12 or maybe $15 of the buy box. It's only a $45 item. I haven't even been within $12 or $15 of the buy box in, I don't know, several months. But I sold 38 of them last month. I don't really understand how that works.
No,
But just like you're saying,
I just
people
told
want
you
it.
how it works.
They don't want to wait.
Exactly. People have to remember there are, I don't know exactly how many Prime Now zones there are. Are you familiar with Prime Now?
Yes, sir. We don't have that in our area because I'm pretty rural.
Yeah,
but
you're rural.
I do understand.
I'm on the south side of a fairly large city with about 1 million people. So we've got Prime Now here, but I can jump on Amazon anytime and say, okay, I'm shopping Prime Now means I want it in a couple hours. So show me the stuff I can get on my front porch within a couple hours. I don't even see the stuff that would take 2 or 3 days to get here.
Right.
It doesn't exist. It's only the stuff that's in warehouses near me that I'm seeing. So you get these ASINs that drop a few times a month, and everyone's kind of fighting over the buy box price, thinking that's where you got to be to make the sales. But if we've got someone who's just parked one, either merchant fulfill from their own garage, or they're sitting in an Amazon warehouse, and it happens to be close enough to me that I can get it quickly, millions of shoppers all day, every day use Amazon that way. They're not price sensitive shopping. They are time sensitive. So if you have the geographical advantage of having your inventory near them, boom, you're the one that gets the sale. And it never shows up on Keepa, never shows up on Amazon. There's no data point anywhere that anyone knows about except you and the customer, that it happens all day, every day. So I love the chances to explain this to people, because you can't find a tool or a chart or a graph or a report that shows you these sales happening, but they're happening all day, every day, millions of them. And it's like you just said, you sold 38 of this thing. What?
Yes, sir.
$14 above buy box on a hot moving,
the closest
supposedly
it's ever come.
tanked ASIN, right?
Right. And it happens. It just, you have to be patient with what you're sending in.
The velocity slows down.
Sure, but as it continues to sell, well, you can continue to send some in, and just don't outpunt your coverage and send a whole bunch of them in, because it could happen that they will stop selling.
I like to kind of paint the visual this way. I would rather have, say, 100 ASINs that sell 3 to 5 times a month versus 3 to 5 ASINs that sell 100 times a month. Because I wake up every morning nervous with 3 to 5 selling 100 times a month. Like, okay, is it still alive? Oh, good. It didn't get chopped.
But at 100, at 100 selling 3 to 5, you wake up every morning and see,
3 to 5 times
look what sold last night.
That's a beautiful business, man. Sales happen constantly. And if the price tanks on one of them, okay, I had to recall 2 units and sell them on eBay, or wait a few months, right? It's a lot more ASINs to manage. But once you've got a good system, the pace of that business is so much better than the pace of selling a handful of ASINs multiple times a month. I'd rather be selling multiple ASINs a handful of times a month.
Right.
To summarize that. It sounds like you're starting to learn some of those lessons too. And we really
certainly
like new sellers. The new sellers need to stay focused on that kind of mindset to minimize, again, the risk.
Be patient, be patient, be patient. And pay attention to what is working, and learn from what doesn't and move on. So yeah, I don't know where I left off.
Man. We kind of dropped off in was it May?
May, I think, is where we left off.
February, March, April, May. Here we are, December of 2023. Let's fill in the gap.
I struggled during the summertime. I mean, everybody's, I had to learn to set some boundaries, because I'm a very handy person. I do a lot of things. I, make and build a lot of stuff. And I have people all the time that would just, hey, can you help me with this? And previously in the summer, all I had was our 2 boys, and I did some landscaping for my wife's office, but, nothing, no real job. So yeah, sure, I can help you with that. And all of a sudden, it's 9 o'clock Tuesday morning, and I realized, wait a second, I'm neglecting what I need to be doing right now just to go help somebody else, which is fine. And I like doing that stuff, but I had to, I had to learn, yeah, I can help you. I'm available anytime after, 06 Saturday morning till the sun, well after the sun goes down, however long you want to work. But that's when I can help you. I can't do it right now. And I didn't do a
Okay.
very good
I,
job of
I
that.
think I hear what you're saying. And I noticed this. I remember when I first went full time into my own business working from home, a lot of people assumed like I'm available now anytime for anything,
Right.
anywhere. I'm your guy. I just sit here and wait for my phone to ring for favors for friends, right?
Right.
I,
But I mean,
I,
because in their defense, I was home in the summertime and I was available to do all those things. I
yeah.
just had to, finally realize, wait a second, I need to do a better job of setting some clear boundaries here
Your teacher
because
schedule kind of had you free in the summers,
it
right?
did, yeah.
Yeah.
And I was no longer available like that anymore. And so, I'm easily distracted. I'd come back to what I was doing and get distracted again. And we got two boys. I got the two neighbors' kids, and they're all great kids. I mean, they play together really well. I mean, our oldest is 12, so they're in between 6 and 12. Well, he'll be 12 in a couple days. But there were a lot of kids running around the house, a lot of interruptions, and I just didn't do a very good job of really setting aside and dedicating, here's what I need to do and here's when I need to be doing it. And outside of those times, I can, I'm available to take the kids to the water park. I'm available to, go help you move your refrigerator, whatever. But I, spent those summer months and I realized towards the end of it, man, I got to do a better job of setting some, clear boundaries here so that I have the opportunity to be more successful because my margins and everything stayed about the same. I mean, sales stayed about the same. They increased a little bit. I think I got a little over 12,000 one of those months, but by August I hadn't grown very much at all. And August and September, my overall sales actually dropped, but my net margins increased. And so even though my overall sales were almost half of what they were in August, the September and October sales were almost half of what August was. My net margin was about, I made about the same, and I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was within a couple $100 of what I took home. And so I did a better job of kind of whittling down on what I was being successful at selling and the numbers, coming away with better buy costs so that I had better numbers at the end of the day, even though overall I was selling less. I still was, my net was still about the same. And I don't
Right.
remember, I think I was up to like 22 or so during that time. But, November rolls around and it started off slow. But again, at the end of November, I was back to, riding the gravy train on biscuit wheels. And I think November I totaled out at 22,830. I was hoping to do about 15 in November. And I quickly went past that and realized, okay, I didn't set a high enough goal. So I was planning on doing 15 in November and 20 in December, and all of that would have put me over about 100,000 for the year, or for the 10 months that I was selling, 9 months that I was selling. But I have exceeded that, and I'm on track to probably go over 25 in December, as long as, I mean, I really had no idea how much stuff to send in. So I sent in more stuff than, I would have normally. And a lot of that stuff is sold. So I think my sales are going to slow down here in another a week or two, just because I underestimated how much I should send in.
Sold it all.
But
And I can tell you
that's
this,
a terrible.
January is a big month too for REPLENS sellers because we're not necessarily just selling. I'm assuming you're not just selling like hot holiday items, seasonal
No,
stuff.
sir. I don't have any. I mean, I have some Christmas lights. That's the only holiday item that I
Sure.
have. I really try and stay away from. I'd rather just do the same stuff. Whatever's working. So that's another thing, is I've tried to be very intentional about. I have done a whole lot more FBM since, I don't know, must have been since Thanksgiving, that week of Thanksgiving. I
Mhm.
started, creating a whole bunch of FBM listings. I had some, but prior to that, but I realized, hey, I got this stuff sitting here. I mean, I might as well try and sell and see what happens.
Yeah.
And I have done quite a bit of FBM stuff the last couple weeks.
We'll get back to the show in just a second, but I've got to tell you about a new sponsor to this program, Ecom Balance. They help e-commerce sellers and Amazon sellers with their bookkeeping. Your accountant is not your bookkeeper, by the way. You've got to be keeping great books. That's how you know if you're profitable or not. If you're struggling to know your numbers, you don't want to be operating on gut instinct. Our friends at Ecom Balance are there to help you out. You can go to Ecom Balance and mention that you heard about them from this program, and they'll give you 2 free months of bookkeeping so you can try them out. A link that takes you straight to the offer is, write this down, it will also be in the show notes, by the way, jimc.biz/keeper. Again, jimc.biz/keeper, as in bookkeeper. Go check them out. Check out their 2 months free offer. Tell them we sent you. Let's get back to the show.
Must have been since Thanksgiving, that week of Thanksgiving, I started, creating a whole bunch of FBM listings. I had some, but prior to that, but I realized, hey, I got this stuff sitting here. I mean, I might as well try and sell and see what happens. And I have done quite a bit of FBM stuff the last couple weeks.
I'm curious.
So
where are you shipping that FBM product typically? Is it East Coast typically, since you're on the East Coast?
I think it's been pretty spread out. There is a lot of it that has gone to, I will say, I would say probably 2/3 of it has been on the East Coast. Okay. And a lot of it, like there've been addresses that popped up, and I'm thinking, man, I could drive this to your house faster than it's going to take for me to, put it in the mail and UPS to get it to you. Mm-hmm. But they wanted it in a couple of days, so I shipped it to them. So yes, a lot of it has been regionally, here in the Southeast.
Because there is an advantage there, and it makes sense. Amazon doesn't have a major warehouse near you. You can actually get stuff out the door faster than Amazon can get it to a lot of folks. Merchant fulfill becomes an attractive option for folks.
Sure.
You ship it out of your garage, and when you're merchant fulfilling, the way to think of it is you are now a mini warehouse for Amazon with the inventory that you have, and they're going to present that to customers who are buying, and that's a viable option. Like, hey, you want it really fast? Here's your best option, especially around Q4 when it just takes them more time to process and ship and get stuff out the door. I've noticed Amazon is very conservative about predicting what can arrive in time for Christmas, especially.
That does change, yeah.
They want to pad their numbers a little bit, but they'll hold your feet to the fire. Like, hey, you say you can ship it tomorrow? All right, you better ship it tomorrow because here we are beginning of December. They need it by Christmas. Merchant fulfill catches fire every year towards the end of November into the first 2-3 weeks of December. This catches fire. But I'm telling you, January will be a nice month for you as well, because people use their gift cards and they jump over and maybe they swap out and do some returns. And, because the returns will pick up a little in January, which is one of the reasons why Amazon holds a slightly bigger reserve on most sellers in December, because they know there's going to be a 5% or so bump in returns come January. But sales will.
I was looking at that this morning. I have a negative account reserve, and I thought that's kind of odd. I don't want to have a negative, but I don't have any control over that. They're the ones that figure out those numbers. Yeah. It just, I guess, because I sold so much, and they are holding more. I have.
You'll get that money eventually, just a little slower after some of the returns take place, and they do it to all sellers. The ones who get hit the hardest, the ones who are really focusing in on like the hot Christmas seasonal type of stuff. Those of us selling the boring stuff that's probably not on anyone's Christmas wish list, our returns are minimal, and all that money, we'll get it eventually. Another great reason to do replens and not get all into the hype of Christmas.
I mean, I did Christmas lights this year just because I thought, why not? I'll try it. But I did a couple Halloween costumes, and I made a few dollars off of. Well, actually, by the time everything's said and done, somebody returned one of them. It was too small 2 days after Halloween, and it was like, oh yeah, you used it and sent it back. And I kind of realized then I don't think I want to do holiday stuff. The Christmas lights they were in that same circular that I saw the tool set in, so I thought, well, I'll try these. But I don't like having there's a limited shelf life on that stuff for when you can really sell it, and I'd rather just have stuff that I can continue to sell throughout the year rather than things that sell really quickly for a short amount of time.
Build a system around it. You can build a team eventually. Build a system, and it's easily repeatable. It's not constant shifting moving target. No, you've built a beautiful business, and I love interviewing students who are, we have plenty of episodes with people who are just killing it, huge numbers, going crazy. But I think it's harder to relate if you're new, especially to someone who's at that level. It's easier to relate to someone like you, Marine, former school counselor, stepped into entrepreneurship for the first time less than a year ago, and now you got a business, $10,000, $25,000 a month, and decent net margins, replacing the pay you used to make with a flexible schedule. You're home with your kids. Like those kinds of stories, really appeal to a lot of people. And you've heard me say it
Yeah.
before, man, just dad to dad. I know that's just such a, I mean, I would take a big pay cut to be home with my kids. But now
Sure.
I got the prospect of making a lot more money than I could anywhere else. And I'm home with my kids flexible. Like, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
interested. I know what it
This
feels
is a
like.
no-brainer.
Yeah, man. I just know what it feels like to be a dad. I don't know what it feels like to be a mom that gets to stay home. I know what it feels like to be a
Sure.
dad that gets to do that. So I want that for as many other men and dads as possible. Our content works for anybody, of course, but just dad to dad, congratulations, man, because that's time you
Thank
can't
you.
get back. I know being 12 was a big deal for me when I was a kid. Having your dad right there through some of the best years of your life, man,
Well,
that's just
I hope they like having their dad right there through some
oh,
of the
they
best
will.
years of their life.
Trust me. Oh, they will, buddy. I tell you the ways it pays off in the relationships that you'll have. I mean, one of my sons asked me to be the best man at his wedding. Like
Yeah,
we're
that's pretty
tight.
neat.
I'm not,
Yeah,
because I was able to be here. I was able to enjoy those moments and
sure.
be with my kids and see them grow up. My youngest is, 17. So my kids
Right.
are getting married and having kids. I've got my first grandkid on the way, but the experiment is over for our family and it was a success.
Right. Y'all
Just
have
having
definitely done
dad
well.
there, and I was in my office a lot. I worked a lot. Like you're out there, I can see your office. I want you to kind of talk us through it. Most people who will see this content or who will get this content, they're going to be listening. But I love the background you have, so I want to talk through that. But like
Sure.
you, I'm working. Like but if my door's open, I can be interrupted. You can come on in. I'm here. I'm on site. If mom needs backup because brother A hit brother B in the head with whatever, I'm here. But just the dynamic of kind of blending it all, integrating it all together, such a healthy way for family to do
Sure.
life these days. So congratulations on navigating that, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
I certainly some days are more enjoyable than others, but I do have to stop and remind myself that I get to do this. And I mean, yesterday our youngest was sick, and he was sick. It's like the first grade bug going around, and he got every bit of that thing. But I was here all day, and instead of being out in my trailer working, he wanted me to sit next to him on the couch, and he just wanted some company and something to help him feel better. But yeah, I watched YouTube videos with him, and we just hung out on the couch. So
Yeah.
I don't know, it was nice to be able to do that,
Yep.
but it is really nice to have the opportunity to do that without really taking away too much. It did prevent me from getting stuff done, pickups and stuff that I was going to do, but that was okay. That's what needed to be done. I had the opportunity to.
Yeah. Enjoy
So
the pace and the flexibility and mind your trajectory. Any given day, I think, I haven't said this in a while. Maybe you've heard me say it in past episodes, but it's just part of human nature. It takes a great deal of discipline and self-awareness to not slip into the default condition, which almost all of us are here in the default condition, where we ridiculously overestimate what we can accomplish in a day.
yes,
And we
sir.
ridiculously underestimate the power of simple habits and the trajectory and what happens as a result of those things over the course of a year. Even though we take a day off, an hour off, a little time off here and there, the trajectory of your story, if we just map it out, put it on a graph, like, okay,
Hmm.
you're going to be here. You're going to be having 50, 60, $70,000 months a year and a half from now. You're going to have a team, 2 or 3 people. Your job is going to be 30% of what it is now. Like that's just the trajectory. You're going to have a few private uh, branded bundles. You're going to maybe have a wholesaler or two. You're going to pick up a new strategy from the conference or whatever. Like I've seen this play out over time. And the thing you have to mind is your habits, your numbers, your relationships. If you can focus on those things, like you're disciplined with your habits. I mean, you're a
Right.
Marine, no problem there. Check that box, right? You're capable of that stuff. So now minding your numbers, knowing your numbers well. Sounds like you're dialing that in pretty well. And then relationships. Don't do this alone. Talk to other
So
people. You've got you've got your friends doing the business and attend to conferences. Always be, put time in each day to absorb new ideas. Your trajectory
sure.
then becomes, it's not relying on what I do today. It's, man, my trajectory is pretty sharp. If I look back over my shoulder for 2 or 3 months, I can project out 2, 3, 6 months. This is a nice trajectory. Yeah.
Right. No, you're exactly right. And
Sounds like you had a
one
question
of
in there.
well, no, one of the things I was going to say is I do this. Technically, I do this with my sister. My older sister lives in Tampa, and so we do work on it together. But given the season of life that she's in, there's not a whole lot of extra margin, and so she hasn't had as much to be able. I asked her if she was going to be on the podcast, and she said, "No, this is your thing right now. you're the one with all the answers. I would just be sitting there. And but it is something that we do work on together. And she has here recently realized, the more engaged she is with what we're doing, the better of an opportunity we have for things to continue to grow exponentially. And branded bundles is the next thing that we're working on. I say we, she's actually the one working on our branded bundles because, well, that's something she has an interest in doing. And that's the direction I wanted to go. I wanted us to go anyway. So she's kind of taken that bull by the horns. And hopefully after the first of the year, we'll have things to a point where we're really going to get started.
Excellent. Yeah. And I don't
trying
want
our
to
first
see,
ones out.
I don't want to see people get, distracted and jump away from REPLENS. You got to keep doing, you got to bolt it down, keep maintaining the systems that have got you where you are. You never just
Right.
abandon.
And
But
I think that's one of the takeaways from that early success and then that early failure is being consistent and taking the things that are working and are working well, continuing to do those things and grow other opportunities from there rather than just relying on them and doing something else. Is I mean, you just have to make sure you're consistent in how you're using the opportunities and resources that you have developed. So yeah, that's a very good point.
yeah, well, you're on a great trajectory. You're doing a tremendous job. I've seen a whole lot of people come through. I mean, we've been doing e-commerce coaching for over 20 years, nearly 10,000 students coached at this point, a whole bunch more than that, taking our courses in content and building businesses. I can spot the trajectory of a leader who's going to do amazing, better. I've just gotten really good at predicting it. You've got all the elements, man. You're you're comfortable in your own skin. You're confident to try new things. You're humble enough to learn. You don't feel like you got all the
Hmm.
answers. Like, hey, you're a plain spoken guy, man. Like, here's where I'm at. Here's what's going on. You're not coming out with a lot of fluff or a lot of unrealistic expectations. You're not bouncing around trying 50 different things and, falling into all these different, guru traps. These guys with the
Sure.
Lamborghinis and piles of cash and all these videos and such. Like, no, you told me before we started recording, you don't spend a lot of time on social media. It's kind of not your thing.
No.
You're focused in, you found a system that works, you're building, you're scaling, you're learning, you're not doing it alone. You got some people you're bouncing things off of. You got all the elements. It's keep doing what you're doing, man. The numbers just get better. It, it,
Well, and that's certainly the opportunity, or I like where the opportunity is headed, because that's one of the things again I stop and think I don't really feel like I'm very successful, but when I really stop and look at it, it's like, man, you're really doing quite well
Mhm.
compared to where you were just a short time ago.
Yep.
So,
That's
but
called
continuing to be
trajectory.
patient.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And something I'd encourage you to do along those lines, I think you see the value of kind of monitoring those things. And this is good advice for any of our students. We do this for all of our coaching students. We encourage them start a business journal. Things you're struggling with today, the wins that you're having
Oh,
today, the things you're
right,
wanting to maybe move into, the system challenges you're having, where you'd like to be in a few, just make a few notes randomly and just in a disciplined way, ideally once a day. And at the beginning of the day, it's gratitude and just kind of thoughts about the business. At the end of the day, it's here's what I did today, here's what I got done, here's what I'd like to do tomorrow, kind of stuff. So you can start off looking at like, okay, yesterday we stopped here. Let's get into it. But before I do, I'm going to gratitude, celebrate the wins,
right,
right? And for
right,
me, for it's a time of prayer for me. Get into the scriptures a little bit. Ideally, that's how my day starts. A little exercise. That's how I do my day. But the end of the day is a recap and then a battle
right,
plan for tomorrow. So you can let your mind rest. I've got my battle plan down. When I get up, I don't have to worry about, did I forget something? No, it's all in the battle plan. Flip back to
right,
the previous day, get your day started with gratitude. Just that's the cycle, man. And I think that would really help you out to kind of map because the trajectory just in you, I think it was almost like a, I don't know, a session, a counseling session or something today. Like, you know what? Now that you say it, you're right, man. I am doing better than I realized kind of stuff. Like you're having those realizations. That should already be documented, man. You should have that written
right.
down somewhere because you go back and look at the stuff you were struggling with in February, which is not that long ago, but you've climbed so many little mountains and turned them into molehills at this point. And that's the journey. It'll keep feeling like,
Right. Well, and I think probably one of the things that a new sellers could benefit, or anybody in general, just in life. But I never really had like, what was your goal for this year? Interestingly enough, when I first spoke to you about doing this interview, you asked me, well, what is your goal for November? And I was like, well, I don't know. I guess my goal's been to get 15,000 in a month, so I guess that's my goal for November. I realized I didn't actually I never sat down and had one, and So, I mean, yeah, I wanted to break 15K in 1 month, but that was it. I didn't have anything beyond that. I was like, once I got to that, what was I going to do? And then you said, what about December? What about the year? And I was like, I don't know. I hadn't really thought that far ahead, I guess.
Yeah. And it's
Yeah, it
good to
was
jot those things down. I'm
yeah,
not a big goal guy. I was actually just talking with my son last night about this. Like, neither, and I think, as I like, even when I read the Bible, I don't hear about goals a lot. Now, I don't think I don't have a problem with it. And it's a good way to kind of check, where someone's mindset. Like, hey, what's your goals for next year, man? I'm not anti-goal by any means, but I don't write down necessarily goals. I'm willing to share them if someone asks. I'm much more about processes, systems, disciplines, trajectory. I'd
right,
rather spend an hour talking to somebody about their trajectory than spend an hour talking about their goals. Because someone could sit down one day and go, you know what? My goal is to have 10 million in the bank next year. All right, good for
yeah,
you, buddy. Like, got any plans? No, it's just
yeah.
a goal. All right, that was time well spent, I guess, huh?
No,
As opposed to, all right, here's the discipline. Here's the things I'm going to eliminate from my life. Here's the things I'm going to add to my life. Here's the disciplines I'm going to have.
sure,
I'm going to do this every day. I'm going to find at least 3 to 5 new ASINs every day. Some days I find less, sometimes I find more. I'm going to do X, I'm going to do Y, I'm going to do these things. This is my discipline. 5 days a week, I'm going to put in at least 2 to 3 hours a day, etc. And I'm going to map out, what does that trajectory look like? What's my worst case, best case scenario 6 months from now? How am I doing? I'm going to check in on that once a month. Like that. There's not a lot of goals in there. It's disciplines. It's daily
right.
disciplines. Sticking to the
Well, and
plan.
I guess that's more of what I'm trying to say is it gives us the opportunity to be more intentional about how or
Mm-hmm.
what we're doing, not necessarily like am I meeting my goal. That just allows you to be more intentional about
Yeah.
the processes and things that you're creating and going
Yeah.
through.
Pick
So
pick a
that's more of
direction.
what I mean.
Pick a
Right.
direction, and then set about, okay, that's where I want to be. All right, what are the things I got to do? Then spend a whole lot of time thinking about what are the things I got to do. It's easy to sit down and
Right.
that's, my mentor said, the only thing God ever created that can wake up one day and go, you know what? I don't like where I'm at. I think I want to
Right.
be somewhere different in, say, 6 months. I'm going to come up with a plan on how to do that. Like, God didn't create anything else in all creation that can do that
Right.
except us.
Right.
What a gift, right?
Mm-hmm.
Don't like where you're at? Change it. Change who
Yeah.
you are, change your mind, change your disciplines, change your habits, change your trajectory, stick to the plan, right? It sounds easy to say. I know it takes a lot of work, but that's the stuff I'm
Right.
talking about. But it does start with picking a goal, picking a target, picking a direction. Like, I want to go over there. Okay, what am I going to have to eliminate and add to my life to get there? But
All right. So
you're doing a great
I
job
will
of it.
say thank you. Since you brought up Rabbi Daniel Lappin,
Sure.
the one complaint I think if I could lodge a complaint, there you go.
I got his
I
book
have
right
that
here.
book. I have that book, and then what is the most recent one that he authored that you interviewed him about on the
Oh,
podcast?
yeah, it's
Uh,
I've got it here handy. The Holistic You.
Yes, the holistic you. I did.
Yeah.
I got that one as well. But my problem is, I literally, this is a true story. I read on about a seventh grade level, like not comprehension wise. It's just my speed is very very slow. And my one complaint about the podcast is if you could get if I could get you and your guests to stop recommending such really valuable books for me to read because my stack grows faster than I can get through it.
Welcome to
But
the,
if
oh
that's
man, every's does, man. Oh, that's
but
funny.
I've really gotten a lot, just in regards to life and personally and professionally through the podcasts that I've listened to and the books
Outstanding.
and stuff
Well,
that have been presented. So
yeah, I mean, it really is an incredible book, and I can easily spend a lot of time on it. I've actually, well, I don't want to divert myself too far. That's a whole other topic I was about to go into. But yeah, when people say,
sorry.
what are the books I should be reading? Bible, hands down, nothing comes close,
Mm,
regardless of worldview, by the way, because the practical lessons that come from just reading Proverbs. If you've never read the book of
sure.
Proverbs,
Yes, sir.
in Christianity, we understand that to be the wisest man who ever lived. Okay, here's his thoughts, broken down into simple little bite-sized nuggets. Wealth
Hmm.
hastily gained is soon departed. What's that mean? Like, probably don't want to win the lottery because that's not going to lead to
Right.
good stuff. And you look around
Right.
and like read stories about people who won the lottery 2, 3, 5 years ago. It's a train wreck
Right.
almost every single time. It's a train.
Yeah.
Like, okay, maybe there's something to that one. Okay, so just
Right.
these real practical nuggets. But if you can break those lessons down, as the Hebrews have been doing for thousands of years, into very practical how to live, all the important areas: faith, family, friendship, finance, fitnesses. The rules are already in place. They've been there for thousands of years, man. There's nothing new to learn in those areas that we don't already
Sure.
know from
Sure.
God's word. right? So that's the practical side of it. But when I say, okay, so you need to understand the Bible, the second book I always recommend is the one you just referenced, Business Secrets from the Bible with Rabbi Daniel Lapin. It's not simple Sunday school lessons about honesty is better than lying and cheating. Like, okay, yeah, that's obviously implied, but it's very practical. Like, okay, you want to be a better business leader? You're going to have to use your voice and your face more. And here's what that means exactly. You want to make more money? You're going to need to spend more time writing down ideas and speaking, right? How do I improve my
Mm-hmm.
ability to do those two things? It's like, who would have associated those with making more money, right? So it's
Right.
just super practical stuff that I've applied to my life and business for it. And I swear by it. And on that topic, since you brought up a nice segue, are you coming to the conference in Orlando? Do you have plans?
Yes, sir. We are planning to. I mean, I haven't. We haven't done anything with our tickets and stuff. But my sister
Yeah,
lives in Tampa, so
right
I
there. Well,
I
hey man,
told her that
let me just
we were
make it
going to be
official.
going.
You've got my contact info. Hit me up. Tickets are on me. General admission tickets for you, the crew, the family,
Okay.
whoever bring the kids. We're going to be right by SeaWorld, so you guys can spend some time there, maybe with your sister. So her tickets, your family,
Okay.
all on
Thank you. I
me.
appreciate it.
Oh, for sure, man. Just contact me because I want you there because Rabbi Lapin is our keynote
I
speaker
know.
as well. So
Yeah, that was one of the. I mean, I wanted to go this past year. It just wasn't a real good time. Yeah, that was another thing. This summer, when things really took a little bit of a downturn, and I had trouble finding things and staying focused, I also discovered a small water leak in our house, and there was a little bit of mold growing underneath the drywall when I cut it back.
oh man,
And it's
last
really
thing you need.
surprising to me now that my body's been exposed to it, how little it takes. How little repeated exposure it takes for it to be very problematic for me. But it doesn't take much, just a few, maybe 10 or 12, inches in diameter and a little bit of growth. And if I don't find it and get rid of it, I have to be somewhere else because that's very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So at any rate, it's hard for me to concentrate on stuff, and that happened over the summer. It just wasn't a good time for me to try and be gone.
Yeah, our
Uh,
2023 event just didn't play out, but it's looking like 2024 May. You
yes, sir.
should hopefully things should line up that you guys are able
No,
to be there.
I think we're already on the calendar to do so.
Nice.
So. Mhm.
Outstanding, man. Oh, I'm super excited to have you guys there. And I think with the timing of this podcast episode coming out, you have people coming up like, hey, man, I heard your episode. Thanks for your service. That kind of thing. It really is. It's like a big family reunion. A lot of really good
Yeah,
people, a lot of really good
right.
families, a lot of homeschool families, a lot of Christian families, a lot of people who just respect and understand the value of how hard it is to be an entrepreneur. And you
Sure,
need community to do it well. You just do. So that's going to be great adding you guys to the family down there.
sure.
Looking forward to
No,
that.
that'd be great. I appreciate it.
Hey, was there anything else you wanted to hit before we wrapped up today, Rad? Did you have anything written down? Any questions for me? This is a great episode, the listeners, and hopefully I provided some value to you as well. But
You have, thank you. Yeah, I think that there are some things that I think folks out in podcast land might want to know. And the first one is, if anyone on the Jim Cochran staff that talks to you at all about being on the podcast, you better be prepared to be on the podcast, because I think when I forget who talked to me, but I mean, it wasn't probably 10 minutes later, and I got a text message from you. Hey, this is Jim. Can we talk? And I was like, I guess so. And then it was like, all right, well, see if you can sign up in the next couple of weeks. What? I didn't know. I thought that what? So if they talk to you at all about it, you should be prepared to be on the podcast, because it's probably going to happen quickly. The
that's
second one
funny.
is, if you want to feel like you're as prepared as you could be, probably don't schedule it in early December, because Q4 is not a real good time for you to step aside and really focus your thoughts and think, okay, what do I want to say, or how do I want to, what questions do I want to ask?
Well, I
Because
appreciate you doing that for us, man.
yeah, you're welcome. I just, I realized, and I really don't have as much time to preparing myself for this as I would like to, just because, I want to be able to use folks' time wisely and have, questions that's going to be valuable to them, because so many people have had questions that were valuable to me. And I think people need to understand just how much it really costs. I mean, I have been very surprised at just how much it has cost of stuff that my buy cost to send in. You can start off with very little, but if you're gonna, if you're gonna have a large sales month, you have to have a lot of stuff that you have purchased and sent in, and it doesn't make me uncomfortable to have spent as much as I have here recently. I mean, I had like a 10-day stretch where I sent in, my buy cost was about $11,000. And I thought, why am I not at all uncomfortable with this? Well, I'm not uncomfortable with it because I've done my homework on it. And even at the worst case scenario, I won't even lose money on what I've sent in. I might get down to where I'm just completely breaking even, but it has taken a lot of investment to be able to have as successful of a month as I have. And I was really surprised at that. It's just how much it really does take
Yeah.
to turn
Yeah.
much larger numbers.
Yeah.
So
And a lot of times people get kind of, they once they understand their numbers, like I've talked to successful sellers, like I'm going out today and I'm buying $1,000. I'm sitting on my computer, or whatever. I'm buying $1,000 worth of stuff because I know that's $1,000 in the bank. Whatever I'm
right,
spending, I'm going
right,
to, because of my parameters, that's what I'm putting in the bank. So they're going to buy
right.
1,000, sell it for 3 after expenses. They're putting 1,000 in the bank, right?
Hmm.
You just kind of get into that churn. So, hey, spending 11 means I'm going to put 9 to 10 in the bank or so as a worst
Right,
case scenario at profit after I've paid for the 11, because that's all my expenses plus the shipping and all the materials. I'm putting net profit in bank X dollars. So you become very comfortable. And something else people get nervous about sometimes too is like, man, I'm looking at my bank account balance. I'm like, gosh, it's about where it was 6 months ago. Okay, well, don't forget to add in all that inventory that hasn't sold yet,
right, right,
because that's a lot of value sitting there. Then that's
right,
cash you could pull back anytime that you're letting it sit and you're letting it churn, and that bank account balance will grow over time as that churn
right.
happens. But initially, with all expenses, hey, I had to buy a printer. Hey, I had to buy a laptop and all those things. This first few months are more about spending money than putting it in the bank. But that account
Sure.
will start growing, and when it does, man, it's just you just see the wheel turning. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it is nice to see. So there's that. Oh, here's another one. Pay attention to your box sizes when you're sending stuff into FBA. I just randomly stumbled into, it seems like every shipment I send in, it's always towards the end of the day. I'm trying to make it to UPS by 5:30. Unfortunately, they're not very far from my house, but I, you know, tried to do too much, too quickly sometimes. And so I was at the last minute hurrying up there. And a couple of weeks ago, I had the opportunity, like, well, let's see. I got plenty of time before I got to get this shipment to UPS. Let's go, buy a bigger box and see what my shipping cost would be. And it turned out, even buying the box, I still saved like $2.50 on that shipment rather than using the two smaller, free boxes that I had already in the little warehouse out here. So pay attention to your box sizes, because even if you're buying boxes, if it's a bigger box to send into FBA that you're using the whole box, you're probably going to save money over sending two smaller ones that were free because you had something shipped to you or you already had them at your house.
Yeah, good point. And there is a training inside the Proven Amazon course that talks about setting up your prep center, what it looks like, what supplies to have, choosing boxes, that kind of thing, minimizing your expenses and maximizing your efficiency. It's a Pablo put that one together for us, I believe. But I'll put a link
I
to it
don't
in
know
the
if I've
show
seen
notes.
that one, but
Yeah.
yeah, put it in the show notes. I don't know if
Yeah.
I've seen that one.
So you can go check it
Um,
out. Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff in there, man. As you have time to dig through it. Yeah, I'll be sure to stick it in there for the listeners. Good tip.
okay. And probably the two biggest takeaways were just being patient and consistent. But people need to understand before they start all this. They need to know what they're comfortable with, what their zero is. I mean, there were times in my life where I had to choose between putting gas in my car so I could go to my internship or eating lunch that day. And I had to have the internship so that I could finish my degree. So that was a no brainer. I was hungry, but that was a no brainer. Now, fortunately, instances like that have been few and far between, but know what your zero is and then make decisions based off of that, because everybody's zero is going to be a little bit different. Now, at this point in time in my life, my zero is not actually zero because I have a wife and two kids, and it's just not good to have nothing anymore or go all the way to nothing. But I'm much more comfortable with being closer to zero than some people would be. And that's okay. You just have to know what your zero is and then make your decisions based off of that, so that you don't overstretch yourself and really wish you hadn't have done something, when if you knew ahead of time, hey, here's what I'm comfortable going to, and once I get to that point I need to slow down or back off so that I don't stress myself out anymore unnecessarily. So I think that was pretty much it. The only just don't have your guests recommend any more really good books, or you recommend any more really good books, because
There's so
I'm
many.
struggling to get through them as it is.
Yeah,
But
my list of books, and there's even some old good ones that I'm dying to get back into and revisit that I want to read as an adult that I kind of flew through as a, teen or young 20s. And
Right.
now that I have a different perspective on the world, but yeah, I have got I don't think it stops. I don't know, just
Yeah.
that list
Probably
of good
not.
books to read. It just keeps growing, man. Good luck ever catching that.
Yeah. Well, I have started to just create a folder on Amazon where a list, I guess, that I save them to rather than buying them. My shelf gets bigger, and I need a new bookshelf because I didn't read all the ones that are over there, but I got some more that I wanted to read.
Yeah.
So I save them electronically now, and then whenever I get to a point where I can,
Yeah,
have
that's
another
why I've
book
got
to
them
read.
on Audible. And there's some work I can do while I listen to good books and be able to pay attention. But that during my run is when I'm typically consuming content in the mornings. I'll get in good exercise routine, and it's a good time to feed your mind and work your body. I found that as a good
Sure,
combo for me.
sure.
But well, hey man, I got another call bumping up against us. I need to wrap this one
Okay,
up. But it
sure.
was great hanging out with you, and I'm so excited to meet the rest of your crew in
Thank
Orlando.
you. I've enjoyed it too, so I
May.
appreciate it.
Yeah, it's going to be a good time, man. So, yeah,
We're looking forward to it.
let's wrap this one up. But just a huge, again, thank you for your service and good job, Dad. And
You're
thanks
welcome.
for all the
Thank you.
great tips and strategies. I feel encouraged today. I hope you do too, man.
Oh wait, there is one tip that I almost left off.
Well, hey, let's
Oh,
hit it, dude.
shoot! I just closed out the thing. There
That's all
is.
right.
Oh, if you want to identify the high pricing error, I figured out
Oh,
just the other day that if you want to identify the high pricing error and know what that ceiling is,
yeah.
open up a create an FBM listing for that ASIN, and then just start putting numbers in. And if you get too high, it'll tell you right there on the screen. It won't let you, it won't let you continue. It gives you a little error message that Amazon has identified this as a price that's too high. So you don't have to try and guess. Hey, it's this price is too high. My repricer brings it up or down. Just
That's a good tip.
create an FBM listing and then take whatever the highest price is
Yeah.
currently on Amazon and work up from there.
Yeah.
And
And see
that
where
is
they've drawn that
Mhm.
line, which is typically arbitrary. And I think it's completely ridiculous. They think they should just let the free market go. But that whole suppressed buy box, and we think your price is too high. You're gonna have to drop your price to sell that ASIN. Like, all right, well, I'm not gonna sell
right.
that ASIN in because I can't make a profit at that price. During COVID is when it got truly insane. I was losing my
Oh,
mind, going nuts. Like, you're asking us to help fill your shelves at a loss on so many
right,
of the most popular hot products. This is insanity. What are you doing with these
right,
price measures you're putting in place? Let the free market figure out what people do and don't want and what they're willing to pay, man. Leave the
right.
resellers alone. We got a hard job here. But yeah, so you do see those. That is a point of frustration. That's a great tip. Set up a merchant fulfilled listing and see how high it
hmm
lets you go before you go out and buy the product, and then send it
hmm
in FBA and get some kind of price alert at some point. Yeah, I love it. That's a
Right.
great tip, man. Good way to
So
end
I
the show.
remembered that before we got off of the podcast. So that's
Yeah,
all I got.
very practical way to end the show. And I think the one thing I want to say to listeners today, maybe if this is their first episode, is if you got some value today, which I can't imagine how you didn't, if you hung with us through this whole show, man, you got a lot of really good practical stuff today. If you want to hear a whole bunch of other episodes where we do this kind of thing, just scroll back in time.
Sure.
We've got coming up on 800 episodes at this point of people, hundreds of them are interviews with great people like Rad. Come hang out with us, spend some time, check it out, get into our free Facebook group. There's a link at silentjim.com. If you're ready to get rolling, get into the
Sure.
proven Amazon course. There's a link there, or call our coaching office. We'd love to chat with you. But hey, Rad, great job today, man. You did a tremendous
Thank you. I
job.
appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, my friend. Okay, and I just think I have a sneaking suspicion you're on a leadership trajectory,
Yeah,
man.
we'll see.
I love your heart,
I'm
man. I
not
love your attitude. I love what you've built and where it's going. So we'll be talking again soon, I'm sure. But
okay. Thank you.
thank you, buddy. On behalf of the whole team that puts these episodes together and our guest today, Rad, thanks for joining us today. We'll have another great episode for you very soon. We'll talk to you then. Hey, thanks for listening. One last thing before I let you go, a reminder, our friends at Ecom Balance are there to help you with your bookkeeping needs. Know your numbers. Keep great books. Their bookkeeping service is free for 2 months. If you go to ecombalance.com and mention that we sent you Silent Sales Machine Radio, or mention my name, Jim Cockrum, here's the direct link if you want to write it down. jimc.biz/keeper. Again, jimc.biz/keeper, as in bookkeeper. Tell them we sent you. Get your books in order, know your numbers, make good decisions. Hey, we'll have another great episode for you real soon.